Good morning. This is Dylan Jovine with Behind the Markets. Happy Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, February 3rd. And overnight, I've been reading about Chinese President Xi Jinping's calls for its currency, the yuan or the renminbi, to become a global reserve currency. They have called for that. They are pushing to make their currency, the yuan that we've talked about here, a global reserve currency. And it's interesting. Of all the predictions I've made in my life, in 2008, when the experts, 2006, 2007, when the experts said the housing market was strong and calling that bubble bursting, in 2020, when the world was panicking over COVID, watching that whole thing, really calling a snapback rally and real with the massive rush of liquidity the Fed was pumping in, it was clear to me that we would see prices increase. But I'll tell you something. I think my most important prediction might have happened in 2022. And that's when those of you who've been around for a while remember since then that we released a research report called China Attacks the US Dollar. And we warned that China was buying massive amounts of gold. They had become the largest buyer of gold. They were cleaning out everybody there. And they would use it to, among other things, create a global currency and launch basically a new currency that would dethrone the dollar. And here we are. I remember at the time, a lot of my friends who work at big Wall Street firms laughed. They called it doom mongering. They said that US dollar was invincible, but like most of the people, they might be good at trading, but they never read history. History is like our secret weapon. We see how humans behave in all scenarios, and we have read our Thucydides. We understand that rising powers challenge established powers. This is the nature of the animal. It's like when a young lion tries to overtake the older lion that's running the pride. So everything we predicted in 2022 is coming true. Basically, we predicted central banks would hoard gold. We predicted there'd be a gold-backed rival to the dollar. And there's a lot of debate now about what China's going to do with this gold. Vladimir Putin has unveiled the unit, that's what they're calling it, for the world to see. And basically, what this currency is doing is it's partially backed by the currencies of the countries and partially China, Brazil, the BRICS countries, and gold. So it's interesting. Now, when you pull the camera back a little bit here, you see a lot of game theory. The timing of Chinese President Xi Jinping's announcement is very telling. After Trump's, we'll call it ham-fisted attacks on Greenland, basically what has happened since then is that world leaders have started to flock to Beijing. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, went to Beijing, cut a new deal, to import Chinese EVs into Canada. Just 49,000 to start. But basically what Canada is telegraphing to us is that if you treat us like that, there are other sources that we can go to. You're not the only game in town. For years, the US was the only game in town. Not anymore. And then Starmer, from England, also went to Beijing when we were basically saying that England doesn't matter and they didn't really fight in the war with Afghanistan. Basically things that they found very offensive. And of course, Orsi visited Beijing also. So what's happening now is when you think of game theory here, is that a lot of these leaders are running to Beijing in the wake of Trump's disruption. And you get to see that, and they flock to Beijing. They cut these deals. And what you have is a scenario now where China, a week or two after they start flooding to Beijing, says, we now want a global reserve currency. So you have to ask yourself, is Trump's plan backfiring? Some of these policies he's pursuing, alienating our allies so much that they're actually pushing them towards Beijing. It's no coincidence that China has called for a global reserve currency weeks after Davos and weeks after this upheaval. It's absolutely no coincidence. Having said that, I can't emphasize this enough. When we wrote the report in 2022, we quoted Sam Zell, famous billionaire real estate investor, and he said, losing the dollar as the world's reserve currency would be worse than losing any war. And he's absolutely right. I don't think people understand how important the dollar's role as a reserve currency, how many benefits that gives us. Think of all the debt we finance. Think of whenever there's a financial crisis and we issue $1 trillion worth of debt, like during the 2009 financial crisis, we had to do the TARP program to save the financial system. We sold $1 trillion worth of bonds, and a lot of foreign investors bought that. If the dollar is not the world's reserve currency, that's going to change. So basically, recessions are going to be much more severe, contractions, interest rates will go higher because, again, all that buying of bonds keeps interest rates down. Your credit card payment will be higher. Your mortgage payment will be higher. Everything will, your health insurance costs will be higher. Everything will be higher. It would be, again, worse than losing any war. So I hope that our leaders are really paying heed to this wake-up call of the past few weeks, really, and seeing that China is coming after us. Don't take my word for it. Take Chinese President Xi Jinping's word for it. He said it himself in the last couple of days. So you can see how this is playing out, and you can see Chinese President Xi Jinping is, not to make the man 10 feet tall, because he is human and he's not 10 feet tall, but you can see how he's basically using every opening that President Trump provides and taking advantage of it. It's like a martial artist just countering every move very, very well. And that gives me cause for concern. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Have a good day. I will see you tomorrow.